Hello viewers, welcome to this new show One-on-One with Mr. Bond, exclusively for the mutual fund distribution community and investors at large. My name is Sunil Jhaveri, also known as Mr. Bond in the mutual fund industry, with 35 years of experience in the finance line and 25 years in the mutual fund space. I'm an expert in debt markets as well as in the asset allocation space. Before I start the show, let me put things in perspective. I'm no longer an advisor, neither do I have any investments in Franklin Templeton wound up schemes, nor do my erstwhile investors have any stake in these schemes as well. What I'm going to do today is ask relevant questions to the management of Franklin Templeton by inviting the president, Mr. Sanjay Sapre, ask some really tough questions for the benefit of the viewers, because there are a lot of narratives which are conflicting narratives happening in the social media in terms of whether the investors should vote yes or whether they should vote no. My intention is to just bring clarity on some of these issues. And finally, after hearing me out and after hearing Sanjay Sapre out, the investors and the MFDs can take informed decision in terms of whether they should guide the investors towards yes vote or a no vote. This show is not to justify anybody's actions or inactions or defend anybody or the AMC in the current context, but just to put things in perspective for the benefit of the investors. Welcome to the show, Sanjay.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the show.
Sanjay, so let me be very upfront. I will hold no punches back. I will be asking some tough questions. The intention of this show is to just guide the investors on the right path by asking certain questions which are there on their minds. And I have compiled these questions after speaking with a lot of mutual fund distributors, a lot of investors also who have written to me on social media and otherwise. And I've compiled that list so that we can answer these questions one by one and give clarity to the viewers. Finally, it will be up to the viewers to vote yes or vote no based on what conclusions they draw from this particular show. So shall we start?
Sure, Sunil. Sure. Thanks.
So the first question which is there on the mind of the investors and the narrative against voting yes is that, investors will lose the right to proceed against the AMC as well as the fund manager in case something untoward has been found, or if they will not be spared, in the sense they will go scot-free if they vote yes, and then winding up of the schemes happens thereafter. So what are your thoughts on that? Because this is one of the bigger narratives in terms of why they should say no to voting.
Sure, Sunil. So let me address that. So first of all, this question stems from an assumption that there has been some wrongdoing, but we'll put that aside for a moment. I think the narrative that says voting yes means that the AMC will go scot-free or the individuals will go scot-free, I don't think really has any basis in fact. One is, you're aware we are in front of the apex court of the country, right? And the apex court is looking into this matter. You're also aware that SEBI has conducted a forensic audit, and SEBI is the specialized market regulator, and they are looking into this. You also know, and you are a debt market expert and a mutual fund expert, you know that mutual funds are well-regulated entities. The assets are custodied with a separate custodian. There are multiple levels of audits. And there is, in fact, it's one of the best regulated industries that we have. You're also aware that, and I'm sure many people are aware, that since the beginning of this issue in April, we have tried to make everything transparently available to investors. So every 15 days, cash generated, what's in the portfolio, what maturities are coming up, whether a security has been upgraded, downgraded, everything has been made completely transparent to investors. We've been through a process with the Karnataka High Court where they have specifically come out and said, we have nothing negative to say about the decision made by the trustees in winding up the scheme.
So that is we are in a record.
That is on record in the Karnataka High Court overall order. So we are in a very transparent process. We've attempted to make that process as transparent as possible for people. So therefore, this question of us trying to run away or get away scot-free, I think is something that people should be cautious about accepting that as a viewpoint. The second and most important thing is people are voting with their own money, right? So this misguided impression that I should vote no in order to punish Franklin Templeton, I would only urge investors to think long and hard first to say, actually, the decision that you make today is about yes or no, and that has a significant impact on the value of your investment. And that's what should guide your decision. We are already under significant scrutiny and will continue to be so. That process will continue. But that should not be a reason to make a yes or a no decision. You need to vote yes or no depending on what gives you as an investor the best outcome for your investment.
I agree. So what I'm hearing from you is that basically, even if they vote yes, and God forbid, if anything wrong doing is found in the investment process, etc., they will still have the right to go against the management or the fund manager if and when they wish to do that, in spite of voting yes. Am I understanding that correctly?
So
Or do they lose the right to prosecute?
all I'm saying is so couple of things which I'm saying. One is voting yes or no, I think has no relevance to the other processes that are ongoing and that will reach their logical conclusion.
Correct.
And two, voting yes or no has to be about you, your investment, your money, and what you think is in your own best interests of your investment. We've been here 25 years.
The narrative is saying that no, it will be good in terms of getting the money out in orderly fashion, etc. But because there is something to hide, and that's the reason why you should vote no. Otherwise, you will lose the right to prosecute the management. Do they lose the right to prosecute the management if they vote yes? Is the question.
So I think that's a legal question, Sunil. I don't believe that narrative is correct. And investors should think long and hard about that narrative before they make a decision based on it. Because I think they are also making a decision about their own money first. And I think that's very, very important.
Absolutely. The question then comes to the point of that sealed envelope of the forensic audit. If we would have made that public and whatever were the findings in the forensic audit, I'm sure the investors will be able to make a more informed decision, right, rather than groping in the dark and then voting yes or no. Is there any merit to opening up that envelope, making that forensic audit public, and then letting the investors make an informed decision? Is that a correct narrative again? Or is it in the hands of the court whether to say yes or no to open that forensic audit report?
So we've always maintained that audit report is confidential. The regulator who's conducting that audit has always maintained that is a confidential document, and they are both well seized and well empowered to take any action if they deem it fit arising from that. This matter has then been through two courts. So as you will recall, the matter of the forensic audit was discussed in the Karnataka High Court. There also, the decision was that it should be given in a sealed envelope. The court went through that. In the Supreme Court as well, this matter was raised again. Again, the Supreme Court considered the matter, and the Supreme Court has also said, no, this is not a matter to be considered now. Let the voting go ahead. The voting will happen from 26th to 28th. The unit holders meeting will happen on the 29th, and this will be submitted to us in a sealed envelope. So this matter, I think, has been considered by two courts, including the Apex Court, and they have opined on it. So I'm not sure there's anything necessarily more that we would say on that.
So what you're saying is basically both the courts have seen that forensic audit. In spite of that, they have requested to continue with the voting process. Am I correct?
So I'm not sure the Supreme Court has seen it yet. I think the Supreme Court has asked that it be submitted to them in a sealed envelope, but they have certainly considered the question of whether it should be made public before the voting or not, and they have not found that it should be made public.
Sure, perfect. What are the key highlights of the interim order issued by Honorable Supreme Court on December 3rd and the follow-up hearing on December 9th? And how do you propose to move ahead with the voting process?
Sure. So, as you rightly said, there were two hearings that took place, December 3rd and December 9th. The December 3rd was the first hearing in this case. On the December 3rd hearing, the court passed an interim order that said, okay, Franklin Templeton, we will permit you to move forward with seeking consent of unit holders under Regulation 1815C, and we will keep redemption stayed. And they said this is without prejudice to the rights of all the other parties. In the subsequent hearing on the 9th of December, there were 2 or 3 additional clarities that were given. One, they said that the entire voting process will have to be, SEBI will have to appoint an observer for this entire e-voting process. So that was one additional clarity that was given. The second additional clarity that was given was that the voting results and the observer's report on the voting will be placed in a sealed envelope and delivered to the court. The next hearing is scheduled for the week of 18th of January. They said 3rd week of January, so that is the 3rd week of January, and redemptions will be stayed till the next hearing. So essentially, over the 2 hearings, they've allowed us to go forward. They've said this is not precedent. We're allowing Franklin to go ahead, but we will still hear the matters of law that are being raised to us. We would like this to be observed by SEBI or a SEBI appointed observer, and we would like the results given to us in a sealed envelope along with the observer's report.
So basically what will happen is after the voting is over, we will not come to know the outcome of the entire voting process till the envelope is not opened by the Honorable Supreme Court.
That's correct. We won't know it. That's correct, Sunil. We won't know it, and therefore there will be no public declaration of it. It will be opened by the court at the next hearing, as we understand.
So have you already appointed an observer right now?
No, so SEBI is to appoint the observer.
So have they
for us, they're in the process. I don't yet have a name for that. From a Franklin Templeton perspective, and we are following these Companies Act circulars on how e-voting is to be conducted. That required a scrutinizer to be appointed. That we had already announced Jay Sagar as the scrutinizer.
Sure.
But the observer name I don't have at this stage.
So there seems to be some confusion in the minds of advisors and investors on how this process will play out. And could you simplify it for the viewers, first of all? And the second question is, why vote twice, in such a long gap of time?
Right. So first of all, just in terms of how the voting is constructed, the 21-day notice, the 3 days of e-voting, followed by the 1 day of AGM, this is all coming from those MCA circulars which define how e-voting is to be conducted. So almost any company conducting a VC AGM, and now in this pandemic situation, many companies have conducted voting and AGMs through video conference. This is the laid down process. So we're simply following that process. So which is how this 3 weeks notice, etc. comes about. If one goes back and reads the judgment of the Karnataka High Court in its entirety, that judgment states that there are actually 3 processes to be followed once the trustees have made a decision to wind up the fund. Right. Step 1 is consent under Regulation 1815C. That is what we are now going for. If consent is received, then you issue a notice under Regulation 39(3), which confirms the winding up status of the funds. And then you seek authorization for liquidation of the fund. And that authorization will authorize either the trustee or someone else, some other authorized person, in order to liquidate the fund. And if you recall, this was the authorization that we were originally trying to seek way back when issued the notice in May 2020. And this was the voting that was supposed to take place in June 2020, which then got delayed because of various court cases, and till the matter was resolved by the courts, after they'd heard it and they gave their verdict. Sure. So that's why we couldn't do it as one voting, and that's why 2 votings. And now there is now the process is, once this first voting is complete, as you rightly said, the court will declare the results, and then the next steps can be taken.
Sure. So I'll just put the timelines in perspective for all the viewers. You have actually given the notice on 3rd of December, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we issued the notice on 6th or 7th of December morning, when people would have seen it. Yes.
Yeah, my mistake. 7th of December. So 21 days, that means the voting will take place on 26th, 27th and 28th of December.
Correct.
9 a.m. starting on 26th December and 6 p.m. Ending on 28th of December.
That's correct.
Am I right? Then 29th is when you will have 6 AGMs for 6 schemes and 6 unit holders of each of these schemes, which will be, I think, a 1 hour process of each AGM.
So it depends on the number of unit holders. I think some of them are 1.5 hours, some of them are 1 hour.
1 hour.
And
So
we've
basically,
cleared
there
that
will be
timing.
6 annual general meetings of 6 different schemes and 6 different unit holders.
Correct.
So those who have not voted between 26th to 28th have a right to vote during the AGMs also. But your suggestion
Correct.
from the management side is to do voting between 26th to 28th because your technology platforms may not be able to accommodate all the unit holders on 29th. Am I correct in observing that?
You are right. There's one small clarification. It's not R. We're using a standard technology platform from KFinTech, which is used by many companies to do their e-voting. So it's none of this is happening on our platform. So just
Sure.
to be clear on the controls and the transparency of the process,
Correct. Yeah, it's
we
better.
issued. Yeah, it's better to be clear on that. We issued the notice, but the user ID and password is going directly from KFinTech to the investors. We don't get that.
Okay.
The platform, the technology platform on which the e-voting happens is a KFinTech platform. We are not, that's not our platform. We have no control, no access.
Will not be able to
Yeah.
join the AGMs based on the numbers which the platforms will be able to catch.
Yeah, correct. And so therefore we're saying, because the important thing to know there, Sunil, is that on the 29th you can only vote if you're able to join the AGM.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
So if you want to make sure that your vote is registered, and I think it's important that people vote, then you'll have a longer period of time, because also 29th, the voting will be open only during that AGM window. It won't be open all day.
Absolutely.
So you have a shorter window, and you may or may not be able to log in. But if you are able to log in, of course, the voting will be open at that point.
Absolutely. And 30th will be the reserve day, just in case something goes wrong on 29th. So that's just for the AGMs to be repeated if at all they needed to be.
Yeah, that's largely, Sunil, just to take care of any technical glitches. You're doing it electronically. You never know, there could be some issues. So rather than not having a backup plan, which could further delay things if you hadn't announced it upfront, we said, okay, let's just make this clear that if for any reason an AGM cannot be held on 29th for technology or other reasons, it will be held on 30th, so that you don't have any unnecessary delay in that process.
Sure. One more clarification for the benefit of the viewers. All those registered votes between 26th to 29th will be the ones which will be counted to count the majority. Am I right in saying? And those who have not voted will have no right whatsoever thereafter.
That is correct. That is correct.
So, out of, let's assume, 3 lakh unit holders, 2 lakh unit holders vote during this period, and that will be the actual counting, and based on which the majority will be decided yes or no.
That's correct.
Right. How will the yes and no options play out for the unit holders? If you can just clarify on that, and what should they be looking out for and why?
Sure. So I think, as I said earlier, now we're at the stage where really there is a lot of narrative going on out there, and there are a lot of different views coming around. My view is that investors really need to look at this as a yes/no vote, and what impact it will have on the funds, and therefore what impact it can have on their investments.
Sure.
So a yes vote, the most important thing in a yes vote are 2 things. One, the funds don't have to open up for redemptions. That means there is no undue selling pressure.
Sure.
Which means you can do an orderly job of winding up the funds. Now, what does that mean, an orderly job? It means you can you're under no pressure, so you don't have to go out in the market and sell on day one. You're not obliged to accept whatever price the market is giving you. You can look at all the strategies that you have available to liquidate a particular asset and decide which is the right strategy for the right asset. So, for example, if I have a bond that is maturing in short order, maybe the most sensible thing is just to wait till maturity and get the money back. Correct. Right? If there is a bond which has a high liquidity in the market and is trading, the most sensible thing might be to sell it. If you
would
have,
done otherwise also, right? Whatever is available to be sold right now, you would be doing the
we
monetization.
cannot sell right now. Right now, there is no active monetization possible, Sunil. It's an important question you ask. This roughly 11,500 crores that we collected was scheduled maturities, coupons, and issuers coming forward to prepay. And we can talk about why issuers have been prepaying as well in a moment. But let's just go back to the yes vote versus the no vote scenario. So in the yes vote, no selling pressure, no need to sell. You can decide whether you want to sell, you want to hold to maturity, you want to take, seek prepayments from issuers. All those options become available to you, and therefore you'll have a more orderly liquidation of the portfolio itself. That obviously means that it will protect the value in the portfolio better because there is no undue pressure and no undue haste in taking any action on the portfolio.
Absolutely.
The second most important thing is that redemptions are closed. No one has to seek a redemption. The money will be paid in proportion to the unit holding. So what does that mean? It means, let's take the low duration fund, which today has, I think, about 48% of its assets in cash. And then let's take maybe the dynamic accrual fund, which has over 20%, right? So what that means is in the low duration fund, a 10 lakh investor will get 4 lakhs 80. A 10 crore investor will get 4 crores 80. A 100 crore investor will get 48 crores. So everybody is going to get a proportionate distribution, proportionate to their unit holding. Nobody benefits, nobody disbenefits. There is no question of anybody having to place a redemption. As soon as the process is logically completed, and as I understand that today, that's this vote and then the authorization vote, then the trustee or the authorized person, the liquidator, will be free to start returning that cash proportionately. So the advantage of and the yes vote is fairly obviously, that's why we wound up the funds, because we didn't want to get into distress sales and we didn't want the risk of big NAV declines, because you're having to sell into a market that cannot absorb the assets that you're trying to sell. So that is in a yes vote, right? So that, in our opinion, is more orderly, preserves value better, and you can do a better job of liquidating the portfolio.
Go to the no vote. Let me just tell the viewers that the hands of Franklin Templeton are right now tied behind their backs as far as selling the securities in the secondary market is concerned.
That's correct.
Even if they have buyers for their liquid papers, they will not be able to sell till this voting process is not over. Am I correct?
You're absolutely right. And obviously, the situation today is far improved from what it was in April.
The risk aversion which was there in the month of April is much better right now. And in fact, this is the time when, if you had the mandate to sell, you would be able to generate much bigger cash elements in the current market scenario.
For sure. I mean, I think if you look at, even if someone just tracks how cash came in, that cash coming in did accelerate as time went by, because the risk aversion did come down, the liquidity did improve. So you're absolutely right on that.
Sure. So now let's go back to the no vote. What will be the impact?
So the impact of a no vote. So the biggest risk in a no vote is that you're opening for redemptions, and it isn't possible to predict redemption volumes, right? It's not possible to predict how quickly someone will redeem in which scheme. And therefore, the problem is you are managing to an unknown, and therefore you must prepare yourself for the possibility of heightened redemptions. Now, logically also, the schemes have been closed for an extended period of time. People haven't had access to liquidity. So it would be appropriate and logical to assume that you would see heightened redemptions when people had the opportunity to exit, right? So if you are expecting a high volume of redemptions, then the question is, you have to prepare yourself for that, which means you have to go out in the market and start selling to generate cash. That could be either because you're anticipating, or you actually get a very high volume of redemptions. So that's the first issue. So you're going to be selling into the market. So if you look at these funds today, they have about 18,000 crores in round numbers of securities still left, right? About
7,500 crores, which is already collected.
Yeah, that was collected, and of that 7,200 is available to return as cash.
What is the difference? Why?
That was the borrowings that were repaid.
Okay.
Right. So if you recall, net assets, I think when we closed, were in the 25,000 range, but the gross assets were 29,000 because of the borrowing.
Right. Because of the borrowing.
So So you've still got about 18,000 crores of securities that need to be liquidated. Now, liquidating that in a rush under an emergency situation, when the market knows you're on the back foot because you have no choice but to liquidate this in short order, is not the best way to liquidate those securities at a fair price. You will get distressed prices for the securities that you're trying to sell. Some may not get immediate bids, and the ones that do get bids are likely to be at a discount, which is going to have an impact on the NAV. Point number one. Sorry, did you have a question?
No, continue. Then I'll ask.
Okay, that's point number one. So this risk of NAV erosion, because you are going out in the market and having to sell at available prices to generate liquidity. The more cash you have, the better cushion you have, but it doesn't mean that you can assume those funds have all the liquidity required to meet all the redemptions that will come. But at least the cash cannot depreciate, but the securities may have to be sold at a lower price. So that's the first issue. The second issue is this inequitable treatment potentially to investors, because now redemptions will be paid depending on the money will be paid depending on the redemptions received. So
it will be fastest finger first. Who puts in your redemption first will get his money first out, and then the
first up, for sure. Yeah, the money payment will be first, and therefore the question is, I redeem today and I get my money X days from today. Sunil, you decide not to redeem for 10 days.
Right.
Now as Franklin Templeton, one of the big concerns in that is, how do we ensure that investors redeeming first don't take away value or liquidity? Now liquidity, of course, will go, but how do you prevent a very unequal treatment to unit holders in terms of this slightly disorderly process where you can't predict the volume of redemptions, you're aggressively selling in the market to create liquidity, and you're having to pay out as and when people ask for the money?
Sure. So
that's the no scenario that we see.
Right, but the question and continuation to that, according to me, because I'm also in the debt market for the longest period of time, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in case you need to resort to this fire sale, so to say, where everything will be sold at a discount, naturally some of these securities will be held by other AMCs also. So
yes,
they will also have to start marking down those securities, and there will be not only a repercussion for the Franklin Templeton investors, but the same investors, if they have invested in the other AMC securities also, will have a similar negative impact on their other investments if this scenario was to pan out. Am I correct in saying that?
That's actually a fair point, and that is a possibility. In fact, I would say that is a probability.
Because that will be a very scary scenario, frankly speaking, from all points of view, not only for the Franklin Templeton investors, but for the mutual fund industry at large also. So that's another point in favor of voting yes, not only for your own investments in terms of what you need to get money out in an orderly fashion, but at the same time not lose value for yourself and the others, or for yourself in the other schemes also of other AMCs also. Now the question, Sanjay, is that since you know that there is a probability of a scenario of saying no, is there any plan B for you to have thought about how would you liquidate these 18,000 crores in the eventuality of a no situation prevailing? I'm sure you must be dwelling upon that because that should be a plan B according to me.
So Sunil, we are dwelling on it. I think and we're looking at all of the various options that are available either under regulation or in other ways to generate liquidity. But I think the simple answer is that under no plan B, will it be possible to equate the outcomes of a yes vote with a no vote? That is not a plan B that we are seeing.
My question was, would you have started dialogue with the buyers, prospective buyers, in terms of the bulk lot or the institutional lots, and maybe freezing some of these sales? Because
you can't do forward deals right now. You're not. Yeah, no, Sunil.
As you said. So are you allowed?
So you can't. So you can't strike forward deals, and
no, I know you can't strike forward deals, but at least some kind of a dialogue.
So all I can say, Sunil, is that yes, a lot of work is going on the portfolio. We recognize that we cannot be blind to the risk of a no vote, and eventually we also recognize that regardless of whether the vote is yes or no, I mean they will judge Franklin Templeton even in a no vote to say, okay, yes, there was a no vote, but still what people will remember eventually is that I put money in Franklin Templeton and this is the outcome I got. So we
Right.
recognize that, and there are a number of those conversations going on, but I can't talk
I'm just
too
trying to
much
get
about
the
those.
news that Franklin Templeton management must be working behind the scene in case of a no vote for them to see the eventualities and the different options which they will have to liquidate that 18,000 crores in an orderly fashion. But there are no guarantees there. As you know, this will be market dynamics playing out, demand, supply, fire sale, or otherwise, and all
Correct.
depends on the number of redemptions which investors will put in the first instance itself.
Correct.
Now, there are urgent needs of cash requirement by many senior citizens and whoever. I'm saying it's just their cash in which is stuck right now. Is there no way SEBI would have allowed you or Supreme Court would have allowed you to pay proportionately up to a certain amount of money out of the kitty which you have already collected to start with, and then the other process would have continued?
Yeah, so I think Sunil, this question was brought up, I think, even in the Karnataka High Court, and my understanding is that you know uh, uh, because the easiest thing to say was to distribute the available cash, but I don't think that was permitted, and the regulations don't have any provision under which the trustees can suo moto go out and kind of distribute this cash. So it wasn't possible to do that. One, two, I think there are six schemes, four with cash, one with very limited borrowing now, and one with some borrowing still left. The advantage of going through a consent and voting process, and the reason we took this step, is it actually then, subject to a successful consent vote, allows you to take good actions for all six funds. So if you get a yes vote, and then assuming that the court authorizes us to say, okay, now you can take the next step under Regulation 41 to get the authorization vote, that's approximately another 3-week process. At the end of that, you've got two advantages. You can distribute the cash proportionately, and you can also start selling in the market to generate more cash, and that I think overall is a better outcome for investors than only distributing cash at today's stage. I think the people worry about what is, there is also a question in people's mind that says, oh, if I put in a redemption I can get money immediately. If I don't, and therefore I vote no, but if I vote yes,
So
I'll
that
have
is
to
going
wait.
to be the next question, that since some of your schemes are already in cash, why would I vote? Why should I vote yes, and why not vote no and get my redemption out of those schemes at least?
So the reason for that is that in a yes vote, you're not waiting interminably for that cash. See, if you put in a redemption, if there's a no vote and you put in a redemption, as we said, there is every likelihood of high volume of redemptions and NAV losses. So you might get some money out, but it is unlikely to be without some kind of a loss, right? And how big that loss is will really depend on how much you can sell, how many redemptions come, so on and so forth. And then you're done. That's all the money you're going to get, because once you've redeemed 100% of your value, there's nothing left to come to you. In a yes vote, first of all, you're not waiting for a long period, because the delta, at least as you read the regulations today, the time delta between a no vote and a yes vote is really this 3.5 week voting process. So
Right.
by waiting another 3.5, 4 weeks, it authorizes the trustee or the liquidator to pay out the cash. Now that cash is being paid out proportionately, so there is none of this who redeems first, who redeems next, what is the NAV, how much did I have to sell, how much impact it came on the NAV because of distress selling. That situation is not there. And so you will get that money, and then the securities, as they're liquidated, you'll also get that money in future. So even in Ultra, you can get 46% of your money 4 weeks later without any distress, rather than 4 weeks earlier putting in a redemption and then having the risk of NAV losses and so on and so forth.
So, what would be the a realistic timeline if they vote yes, and when should they start receiving the first set of money coming back to them
So
wherever they you have
yeah,
cash in?
so a little bit depends on, once the court opens the envelope, if the court gives any specific directions. But just if I read what's in the regulation, and if the court doesn't give any other direction around it, then we have to go through this 3.5 week voting process.
So that will
So,
be 19th January after the Supreme
yeah,
Court
so
ruling, and
18th,
then
19th,
thereafter.
20th January, correct. So one in broad numbers or in broad timelines, one could say middle of February, if you complete that process, then you can, assuming there's no other contrary directions, then you can the liquidate be in a position to get money in that half of February itself.
Um, yeah. So Sanjay, we lost you there a little bit because I think
Sorry,
your
Sunil.
connection went away. So just to repeat what Sanjay just mentioned.
My connection dropped.
Yeah. So what Sanjay just mentioned is after the Supreme Court opens the envelope, and if let's assume it's a yes vote, what the investors should expect is within 3.5 weeks thereafter, which will be mid-February to end February, is when they should start expecting to receive the refunds back in the first instance. And then thereafter, as and when they collect money. So after that first redemptions or the refunds have been repaid to the investors, you will make an effort to start selling the securities as and when possible, prematurely or in the secondary market. If not, then you will wait for the maturities, etc. And then as and when they get the money, you get the money into the schemes, you will start distributing them immediately thereafter. So there will be no waiting period once you receive funds on an ongoing basis. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, that's a correct assumption. The only thing to be kept in mind, Sunil, is that you if you got if you got a very small amount and you know that there's a bigger amount coming in a period, you will make out logical payments because there's a cost to the payment as well, and there's a materiality to how much you pay investors. But yes, subject to there being a reasonable amount of money, there is no reason, no benefit to us, and no reason not to pay out that money as soon as possible.
Sure, absolutely. How will the active monetization process work thereafter? Can you throw some light on that? Because do you have a plan? What is the current liquidity situation in the market of lower interest? We are at a very opportune time, frankly speaking. Those who have stayed put for the last 8 months, I can only imagine that they will be in huge benefit because of the lower interest rates. And RBI is going to continue with this lower interest rate regime for the next 6 to 8 months. At least that's what they have mentioned, almost mid of 2021. In the current scenario versus what was the scenario in April 2020 with absolute risk aversion, how much benefit would be there for the investors, which is already priced in, and what will be a monetization process?
So I think the monetization process is very simple. It will be a security, and as I mentioned earlier, it will be about making the best decision for each security, which combines value with time. I think if you just went back, and the best way to explain it, maybe Sunil, is to look at what has happened in the last 7 months in an environment that was not as conducive as we are seeing currently.
Correct.
Right. So if you looked at the maturity profile of the funds that we put out on 23rd April 2020, and if you look at the monetization that has happened as against that maturity profile as of and the 15th December portfolio disclosure will be out very shortly, you will find that in every single scheme we are ahead of where we expected to be, and this is without the ability to actively sell anything in the market. So therefore, when people say, oh, will I have to wait till maturity, it's a very unlikely scenario. We've been able to exceed the maturity profile even in relatively difficult market conditions, and therefore we will use all of these strategies. So whether it is secondary market sales, whether it is hold to maturity where that makes sense, or whether it is prepayments or buybacks from the issuers of these NCDs, we will use all of those, whichever one makes the most sense, and try and get this money back as quickly as possible. I think it's also pretty.
Sorry, if you can throw some light on the positive aspect of the softening of the interest rates on your portfolios.
So I think what that has done is made it more attractive for issuers of NCDs, some of the NCDs which we are holding at relatively high yields, to refinance. So let's just take a simple example. If we are holding an NCD issued by a company at, let's say, 11%, and
Right.
the coupons are actually disclosed in the portfolio, so people can see that there are NCDs that are held at 9.5, 10, 10.5, 11, and even higher interest rates. And that company in today's environment, which has significantly more liquidity, is able to go and refinance that at 9, 9.5, or 10%. That's a straight benefit to that company in terms of reduced cost, and therefore improved business efficiency. And there is enough liquidity now where companies can go and get refinanced, right?
Sure.
So that's the advantage of holding a paper which has a higher coupon in an environment where the rates are falling. You're obviously, the paper becomes more attractive because it's giving a better yield, but it also makes it more attractive for companies to refinance if that fits in with their business plans. And therefore, these opportunities, which clearly wouldn't, you know, if we had sat back on 23rd April and said, can we see visibility of, and we talk about 7,200 crores, but total cash generated is actually 11,500 crores, right? Because some of it went to borrowing.
Correct.
That's still cash that was generated. Sitting back on 23rd April or 23rd May, even at that point, it was a tough period. Would you have visibility to say you could have liquidated 11,500 crores in this period of time? I don't think so. I don't think
Absolutely.
so.
And plus,
And
you
therefore, I
also
think
mentioned that
I
some of
think
the
that
promoters wanted to prepay, and this is one of the reasons I think they've prepaid because the interest rates went in their favor and they could refinance it at lower levels.
they could refinance. Correct.
Right. So for the viewers, let me make let me make you understand as to the softening of the interest rates was for the benefit of the holders of papers of Franklin Templeton, because when the interest rates soften, the underlying securities prices go up, and that benefits the unit holders as far as these schemes are concerned, and that benefit is already priced in the cash generated by Franklin Templeton, or going forward as and when they generate or sell securities in the secondary market also. So that is to put things in perspective as far as the investors and the softening of the interest rates from April 2020 to the current scenario is concerned. Now, in a situation of no voting by majority, can you, under such abnormal circumstances, I think we have already covered this, but this came up many times in terms of whether we can take money out proportionately or not, and will that benefit the investors, or will that not benefit the investors?
So, Sunil, if you look at the way the regulations are written and what is within the authority of the trustees to act, or the AMC to act, no, there is no such thing where we can do suo moto decide to do a proportionate distribution rather than to allow for redemptions. If there
Because
was
it's a court directive, is that the reason why you cannot do anything like that? Or if
no,
there was
but
no
even
court directive, you could have managed to do that?
No, it's not. The court has not interfered in this. This is just, mutual funds operate like this, right? If a scheme is open, then you will pay redemptions on a demand basis, right? And there is nothing in the regulations that suggests that you can make any changes to that in terms of paying out proportionately or otherwise. That would need to come if something like that had to happen. It could only happen with appropriate authority from potentially the court or something like that. But suo moto,
Sure.
we will not be able to go out and say, oh, we've lost the vote. So this is really the question people are asking, saying, oh, as Franklin Templeton, you've lost the vote. On your own say, oh, because we've lost the vote, we will not open for redemptions. We will try and do some sort of proportionate distribution. That's really the question that's coming, and that's not possible.
Something which is not beyond the voting is the question which I would like to ask you. So for the benefit of the viewers is, what is Franklin Templeton, what does Franklin Templeton lose or has lost by actually putting this for winding up, which was in the best interest of the investors? What did you put at stake for the benefit of the investors?
So I think the first and most important thing we put at stake was our 25-year reputation. So Franklin Templeton entered India, way back in 1995 and launched our first funds, way back when. Many global asset managers came, some left. We were here through that entire time. And I would like to believe that we built a reasonably good brand for ourselves and a reasonably good name over these past 25 years of being here. We had a good suite of products. We were known for introducing some good practices to the industry as well. So we had a strong reputation to protect. Of course, we're a global brand, but even in India, we had, I believe, done a reasonably good job of building a business. So the first thing we put on the line was the reputation. You referenced it earlier. Clearly we are not looked at the same way and will not be looked at the same way for a period of time as a result of this incident. That's one. That's over and above, and for anybody who tracks it, and this has been reported as well, that's over and above the loss in AUM and revenue and all of that, which to my mind is there. But really, for us, the biggest thing is how do we gain back the reputation and trust of investors that we put on the line through this process. And for us to do that, we need, a yes vote will allow us to do that, because it will allow us to do a job of winding up the funds in an orderly manner without all of this distress selling and big losses, etc., that may come with that disorderly scenario. And as I said to you earlier, we are painfully conscious. I am painfully conscious that eventually people will judge us by what outcome they got from this process, right?
Absolutely.
3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, of course, I'm not saying that the other things will be forgotten. The most important thing that people will remember and experience is, I put 100 rupees into the Franklin Templeton debt funds. Those funds got closed. I lost liquidity for a period of time, but I walked away with this outcome. And whether they judge that outcome positively or negatively is what will be very important for our future going forward.
Sure. And are you still committed to India and its operations, even post all this is sorted out?
Absolutely. I always like to remind people that yes, of course, these were very successful funds that we had for a very long time. They're not new funds. They've been in existence for 10 years, 12 years, even longer. They were a significant part of our AUM. But we still have a very sizable AUM in this country, 50,000 crores of AUM in our other funds. We have a large number of unit holders in these funds. There is nothing that has derailed the attractiveness of India as a mutual fund market. It's one of the fastest growing markets in the world. So there's absolutely no reason to be concerned that Franklin Templeton's investment or commitment to India is wavering. What we want to do, and the whole point of this, is to give as good outcomes to investors as we can in a difficult situation, so that we can start to regain some of what we have lost as a result of this decision.
Your parting thoughts, Sanjay.
My parting thoughts are that this is a very important decision for investors, and only an investor can decide what is good for themselves, because eventually investors will need to remember that the decision they're making has direct implications on their own investments and the value of their own investments. And therefore, I would urge investors, please do vote, because it's important that you cast your vote so that you act to improve the outcome that you would like to see. So it's important that you vote. And two, I think it's important that you seek advice, if you need it, from somebody who's trusted, so that you can make sense of all the noise and you can make that decision which you really believe is in your best interest. But eventually you must make this decision on the basis of what it is going to do in terms of your investments and the value of your investments.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for taking out some of the really tough questions which are being put up by the investors at large. I hope viewers have understood what we are trying to achieve by doing this particular show, by inviting Sanjay Sapre to answer some of the toughest questions, according to me, in one of the most trying times as far as that their AMC is concerned. As I mentioned earlier, we are not justifying any actions or inactions of the AMC. We are not here to dwell in the past. What is controllable in our hands and what can be controlled by the investors and their mutual fund distributors is based on the interview which I have just conducted for the benefit of all the viewers, and taken informed decisions. There will be a lot of negative narratives which will continue to happen till the voting process is on. Don't get swayed by it. Finally, it is your money. You need to have access to your own money as soon as possible in an orderly fashion. I'm not trying to influence any voter in terms of saying yes or no. I have only put forth the views of the management, some of my own thoughts also, because I'm also an expert in the debt market space. And that's what I have pointed out, that if God forbid, if the vote is no, there will be repercussions not only for the investors of Franklin Templeton, but for mutual fund industry at large also, because many of these papers will be held by other AMCs as well. And if there is a fire sale, only time will tell as to what can happen at that point in time. So please vote sensibly. Please vote with these information which we have provided to you. Put that in perspective. Consult your mutual fund distributors. Do not get swayed by the negative noise around it. Take your call. It's your money. Thank you so much for coming on this show, Sanjay. And I hope we will be able to wind up your schemes in an orderly fashion, and some relief comes to the investors as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunil, for having me on the show. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.